I love this graphic from the National Cybersecurity Center, 10 Steps to Cybersecurity. It's out of the UK. It's just a holistic kind of approach to cybersecurity. And if you haven't seen, I'm just going to walk through the 10 briefly. But basically, it shows that it's a comprehensive program. It's all these parts coming together. And yes, there are tools and automation that can be baked into these, but the point is it's an overall program. And every time somebody kind of sees this for the first time, they're like, oh, I didn't think about that being in there. And so it's very important. So let's just kind of walk through that. So the first one is risk management. Ooh, one of my favorites. Take a risk-based approach to securing your data and systems. So you can't do everything. I talk to companies, sometimes who are like, no, we're going to do everything. Nope, you're not going to do everything. You don't have the money for everything. You don't have the time for everything. You don't have the resources for everything. It's not going to happen. You can't do everything. And so it's very important that you take a risk-based approach. Focus your efforts where your highest risks are, and don't focus your efforts where your lower risks are. If you have PHI or PII in your environment, that's automatically your main focus, because protecting the data is the name of the game. And so very important that you focus there. Are other things of risk? Sure. Confident if you have the Coca-Cola secret formula, sure, that might be on the same par. And yes, there's company confidential, but focus on regulated data first. Focus on things that you're responsible for. Your customer data, I always say that too. Classify that up there. Your customer trusts you with their data. High risk, because it's their data, it's not yours. And whether it's people's identities or whatever it is, it's someone else's data, so it's automatically of a higher risk, because your reputation goes with it and your revenue goes right out the door with it. And so take that risk-based approach, because you just cannot do everything. So risk is number one, risk identification and your risk management principles. Engagement and training. So collaboratively build security that works for people in your organization. So train people, help them to not be ignorant, help them to understand what they need to do, have clear boundaries of what their responsibility is, do the training, but create a culture of awareness around cybersecurity. Go that extra mile and help people be successful, because they are your weakest link. Engage them in this process. Very super important. Your people, if they're on board, will make a more united front, like social engineering. People still don't know about social engineering, and they're really preying upon people's kindness and willingness to help, and that's unfortunate, but that happens. But if you help people understand that and you bring that awareness, then they're probably much more willing to be vigilant. And quite frankly, there are some things you just can't put a technical control in place for. If somebody gives out their credentials, their login credentials, and hits the MFA button, which actually has just happened in this latest crime group that has come out, then guess what? That's really hard. Now, you can put some controls about, hey, you logged in from the United States and 5 minutes later you logged in from another country. You can put some technical controls to help to capture that. But the point is, it's just we're in this game of constantly staying ahead of the bad actors. And so train your people, engaging them in the cybersecurity process. They're very much a part of this, and training them is just critical to the success. Asset management. You can't protect what you don't know you have. Man, that is step number one. And companies think they know where all their assets are, but do they? Most of them do not. They miss certain things. You can have discovery tools in place to identify assets, but guess what? If you don't keep your IP ranges up to date in the discovery tool, it may not, or you don't have your login into the devices appropriate, it may not be finding things. So trust but verify. Put it in place. Use what you can, but trust but verify. And then there's other assets. Do you know where all your data is? Do you know where all your PHI, all your PII? Do you know where that is? That's another part of asset management, is understanding where those things are. And so really, you can't protect what you don't know you have. So asset management is just core to cybersecurity. Architecture and configuration. Design, build, maintain, and manage systems securely. So the lesson here is build security in from the beginning. Security has been an afterthought pretty much ever since it's kind of come on to the scene. And so build security into the design, build security into the architecture. When you have your SDLC, your software development lifecycle, Don't wait till the end to bring the security people in. Bring them in from the beginning. Bring them in when the requirements are first being talked about, when the scope of the project is being discussed. That's the time to engage security. And then all the way through the process, let them have visibility to that. That's baking security into how you architect and how you configure things. You buy a new tool, or marketing buys a new tool. Security needs to come in and look at that. How is that thing being configured? How is that being integrated into our environment? It's, again, creating this culture of security where security is baked into the processes from the beginning, never an afterthought. Vulnerability management. Keep your systems protected throughout their life cycle. So vulnerabilities are open doors and windows. If I leave the door of my house open, somebody can just walk right in. That's a vulnerability. If I don't have good practices around to identify vulnerabilities and then to prioritize getting them remediated, I'm leaving my doors and windows open. But just like I said on the first one with risk management, you can't do everything. So some vulnerabilities you're going to leave out there. That's fine. But which ones are you going to deal with? What's the time frame you're going to deal with them in? Maybe certain systems or data stores or locations or whatever. However you slice and dice that. The point is, you have a very clear picture of your environment. That's where the asset management piece is. You understand the prioritization of the things in your environment. You have a vul scan process. You have a vulnerability management process. You have patching. You do all that. You're getting the alerts. All of those pieces are coming together to keep those doors and windows closed. And then you can't do everything. I've talked to companies who are like, well, no, we're going to remediate all of them. Okay, that's not realistic. Nobody expects that. But you are going to remediate the highs and criticals. And what timeline are you going to do that in? And what is the process for that, and really understanding what that is? And there are some automation for tools coming out on the scene for this, which is helping a lot. But, you have to have the money to buy those, obviously, right? And then you still got to you still got to trust but verify. It's great to have a tool, but you still got to have a process. You still have to have an oversight. It's still trust but verify to make sure that everything is going as planned. Because here's the thing, if your vulnerability management, you have like an auto patching, you still need to do testing of those patches. You still need to make sure that there's not an asset over here you don't even know about, which is not even coming under the fold of this tool. So it's not happening. That's bad. Sometimes they come in as a low or a medium, and that analysis needs to take place like, ooh, no, for us, for whatever reason, this is a high. We need to work on this. Those processes. So there still takes that oversight of the program and that practice for it. Very, very super important. Identity and access management. Control who and what can access your systems and data. What a fabulously easy way to come in and steal data from your system is to log right in. And if you don't have good access control in your environment and know who has access to what and how that access is provisioned, guess what? They can come right in there and bam, go right in and take the data. You don't have complex passwords. You don't instruct people to not do password reuse or use certain words in their passwords. All of those variables that come into play makes it easy for them to get in. So very important that you have identity and access management processes. It also includes user access reviews. Make sure that people have the right level of access, and make sure you have appropriate security groups that are role-based. You want people to have just the perfect amount of access they need to do their job and nothing more. Because if I hit a phishing link and I have lots of access, I have now exposed all of that with the phishing link. But if I have minimal access and I hit a phishing link and there's good responses on the endpoint to take care of that, then guess what? My risk is mitigated. And so that goes back to the risk management. That goes back to creating that risk posture. And then watch for, onboarding and terminating people to make sure their access is cut off. A lot of the tools are in the cloud these days. Sometimes tied back to AD or SSO, sometimes not. And so you can have people out there with cloud access to tools, and you may not figure it out for however long, and depending on what that tool does, that could be very bad. And then likewise, when people change jobs, if somebody moves from IT to sales, their access better severely reduce. And a lot of companies are missing that change boarding process of really stripping them of their access like a terminated person, and then provisioning them for their new role. And so it's kind of a terminated process process and then an onboarding process around the access to make sure that they don't have more access than they need. So that's part of that as well.